Have you ever noticed that people outside of social media and the press, just sort of like regular people in your life, don't like to discuss politics? Is that something you've noticed? I think there's a good reason for that. And it kind of starts with a philosophical observation that when it comes to politics and it comes to, like, first of all, what is politics? I mean, I would suggest that it's sort of a philosophical extension of the field of ethics. And everything in politics has to do with whether more or less government should be used for a particular purpose. And keeping that in mind, the observation that I think you want to make to understand this is that implied in every law, every regulation, every tax is a promise to kill you. And I know that sounds extreme, but think about it. Spiderwebs on this path. Think about what it means to break the law, any law, in fact. If you refuse to pay a tax, you will get a strongly worded letter. And if you ignore the letter, you may receive a summons. And if you ignore the summons, then agents of the state might show up at your home or your place of work, and they might attempt to arrest you. And if you resist arrest, they will use violence against you if necessary to force you to comply. And if you resist enough, they will accept your death overall. They would prefer you dead than successfully rebellious. So every law, this applies to every law, from ones that I would consider to be just laws, like anti-murder laws, anti-rape laws, anti-theft laws, all the way down to the most meaningless of regulations. If a police officer wants to, he can cite you for jaywalking. Anything can escalate to your death if you resist. And ultimately, what that means is that to the degree that government is unjust, obviously it's founded on taxation and the legal right of monopoly that the state claims, the monopolization of certain services. And but then you sort of extrapolate out from there certain things. And there are certain things that the government does that any just society would do. And then there's a whole lot that it's hard to imagine a just and free society would do. And so what happens is, to the degree to which the government is engaged in these unjust laws and regulations, you are a slave. Because most people are not going to escalate to their own death over a parking fine or something like that. So you are subservient. You are oppressed. You are a slave. And that's a painful realization. That's a painful thing to admit. This is kind of like an analogy to a child who grows up in an abusive situation and they have nothing to compare it to. And so it's normal for them. But at a certain point, they become an adult, they develop reason, they are able to look at the world around them and assess the situation from which they came. And they can compare the two and come to the realization that they were at one time a slave to that situation. And it's a very painful thing, and people do not like to do it. People don't want to admit their own victimhood outside of progressive politics. People don't like to admit to their own victimhood. Because it's sort of demoralizing. And they will fight tooth and claw to avoid conversations that reveal the nature of their relationship to their masters. And what happens is then conversations about politics become monopolized by the very people who are responsible for that tyranny, the politicians and their co-conspirators in the corporate press. And regular people just don't get a chance to engage with that. And even when they do, they don't want to. You're sort of left out of the conversation. It's a really weird thing. It's a really weird thing that politics has such an effect on our lives, and yet no one in the real world wants to talk about it. Because when it comes down to it, like, if you were to engage in a conversation like that with a family member at dinner or a coworker, at the water fountain or whatever, somebody is taking the side of violating your rights, and someone is taking the side of protecting them. Nobody wants to be the person advocating for your rights to be taken away, and no one wants to be put in a position where they're accusing a family member or a coworker or something like that of defending it. And so we just kind of sweep those conversations under the rug, and we go about our lives as if we live in a free society. It's a sad, sad thing.